Got it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're excited to have a very special guest. I have lots to share with you about Miss Lesley Seymour. Lesley, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Well, it's good to have you. And I want to, take a minute and just thank our audience. We know you have a choice. So thank you so much for joining into the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. We bring exciting guests on so that you can, just expand your horizons, hear different perspectives, and also have access to people that you may not have an opportunity to hear from. So today we're thrilled to have Lesley here, and I'm going to give you just a little bit of background on her before we jump into questions. But you may know Lesley as the former editor-in-chief of More Magazine, which is a leading lifestyle magazine for women over 40 with a readership of 1.5 million. And in 2015, she created history by having the First Lady, Michelle Obama, who I absolutely love. I think she's just magnificent. She was a guest edit for the issue, which led to 8.5 billion impressions. That's massive. And she has such a following. She's such a genuine, beautiful human being. Lesley has also worked with and interviewed hundreds of prominent women and to call attention to issues that impact women around the world. She brought actress Drew Barrymore to Kenya to shine a spotlight on the issues of rising hunger and the barriers to education for girls. She took her team to march with actress Salma Hayek around Washington Mall in wedding dresses to highlight the plight of domestic violence in the Latino community. And she's traveled to Japan, Cambodia with First Lady Michelle Obama to cover the launch of Let Girls Learn, which is Obama's program to help girls around the world get better education. Lesley, you have had quite the experiences. I can't wait to hear.
Who would have thought? I just wanted to be a writer. I just wanted to get published. That was my sole goal.
And look at you.
I got to do all this other great stuff. So it was a tremendous amount of fun.
No kidding. No kidding. I can't wait to get into more of that. But I want to tell people what you're doing today, because I think also what you're doing now is super important. So Lesley is now the founder of Covey Club, and it's a club for lifelong learners, which allows women that are 40 plus to bond over issues of interest and concern. Her blog is written and produced by the best journalists around the world, and she also offers a weekly podcast called Reinvent Yourself with Lesley Jane Seymour, where she's interviewed over 200 women on the art of reinvention. And so today we're going to talk a little bit more about reinvention. But before we get there, Lesley, let's talk about, you've had this incredible career. You've done so many things already and had, significant impact, even going and marching at Washington Mall on violence, that's massive. And, dealing with hunger and education.
Oh, so many things. Yeah.
Yeah. So what has led you to Covey Club, and who is Lesley Jane Seymour today?
It's funny. I'm the same person. That's what's so interesting is, when you talk about sometimes you're forced to reinvent yourself, which is what happened to me with, when they closed the magazine. I could have gone on and looked for another job running another magazine. I'd run 4 of them. I ran Mary Claire and Redbook and YM before that. And it was I don't want to do the same thing over and over again. I want to do something different. And what could that be? But when you look at, especially women, what you do, there's a woman who I met who was a professor down at Duke, who was talking about what's your question? What's the question that you're trying to answer? Then if you look back through your life and through all your career in general, even for women who leave the workforce and come back in particular for women, it's for men as well, there's often a question that you're trying to answer. And when I really had to ask myself, what was my question? It's all about how can I give a broader voice to women who are underserved or underheard, and how can I bring information to them that they can use to make their lives better? That's basically what you do in print. That's what print was all about. So when you think about it, and it wasn't conscious, this is not what I was thinking. I was just thinking, oh my God, I got to do something else. And I don't want to do magazines because they're all dying. But basically, I just thought, how can I keep doing what I do? I edit content out there for women like us, 40 plus, and I take the best of it and present it to you, whether it's in print or digital, or by bringing experts into Covey Club to teach on certain topics, or by pulling people together and doing challenges, or by doing live events, there really isn't a difference. It's the same thing. And so I was lucky enough that when they closed more, technology had reached a point where I could say, oh, well, let me just keep doing the same thing I do. Because that's my MO in life. That's my whole, I get a joy, just like you probably get a particular joy out of talking to people. I get a joy out of seeing women thrive. I get a joy out of putting them together and seeing them grow. I've been very lucky. I've had an incredible career. People have, put me together with people that changed my life and changed the direction of my career and everything. I mean, I worked at it. It's not like it just fell in my lap or something, but I've been very lucky. And so how can I do that for other women? And that's basically what Covey Club is all about.
I love it. I love it. You're speaking my language, Lesley.
Yeah, I can tell. I can
yeah,
tell.
Same thing. Like just is and how do we lift each other up, right?
Yes,
because that's how we actually make changes in the world.
That's right.
We're all represented and our voices are being heard.
That's right.
Love that. And I'm so grateful that you've been able to continue that and found a way to just, do even a broader extension, because, your touch points are so much bigger now with digital, right?
Yeah.
So that's huge.
And I don't have to worry about, can somebody, put the thing out on the newsstand, and are they putting the Christmas, candy in front of the magazine so it won't sell. I mean, you can't believe all the ridiculous stuff we had to do when we were running magazines. But I like the fact that I also like the high touch. I like hearing from my consumers. I've always been driven by my consumers. I was probably the only editor-in-chief who actually read every letter that was sent to me, because that was my juice was coming from them. I used to do presentations. I'm sure it didn't win me any points in corporate, where I would, do presentations to my whole staff of, who is our boss? And I would take my boss's picture and I would put the picture up there and I go like, how many people think this is our boss? And all these people raise their hand, and then I'd check out the slide, and there'd be a big slash across her face. I'd be like, this is our boss. Our boss is the customer. She's a boss, but she's not the big boss. The big boss is the customer. And so I've always loved that. I've always loved that connection. And now it's closer because you hear the good and the bad, like, oh my God, I pushed this button and this didn't work. Or why didn't you? I tried to get into this thing. I bought a ticket and I couldn't get in. You're like, oh God, what's going on? But I like people will, somebody sent me a beautiful note just the other day that just like made my whole week. She said, I'm driving home and I had a 10-hour drive and I listened to 3 hours of your podcast and it so inspired me and it was so fabulous. And thank you for doing this. And I was like, oh my God.
Yay!
Because we do this stuff, like, we do this stuff and it goes into the ether. You don't know, does anybody care? Is it, is it worth anything? Why am I could be out having a nice swim today, but I'm doing this instead. And then you hear back from people for whom it impacts. And you're like, okay, that's my meaning. That's why I'm here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I always say, if even we touch one person.
Yes.
We've done our job.
One person at a time.
Exactly.
One person at a time. I have this thing called the spoon theory, which is really silly. But this is why I believe women are really good at this. And I've seen it work with magazines. I mean, we used to do all kinds of things, when Clinton was working for gun control, when he was president, I was at Redbook, and he needed support to get gun control through. In those days, you had to put in a pop-in card into the magazine, and they had to fill it out and send it back to you. So we would do things like that where each person's voice could be heard. What we didn't know is that when you take that, I thought, we'll just take that bag to, Capitol Hill and land, but you didn't realize you have to sort it all by district.
Oh,
and you have to give it those cards, you had to give it to each individual representative from each of the whole thing was a mess, but we did it. And it was, something like 6,000 responses. And what you realize is that each individual voice matters, and each individual voice can change the world. And women should always be aware of that. And I call it spoon theory, which is if we were all in prison somehow, and we all had just our spoons from our yogurts, if each of us started digging together,
Yeah.
we would eventually get out.
Yeah.
So it's working together, even with these little, scoops that it's like, oh, what can I do? I'm just, an individual. An individual can do an incredible amount. And I have seen women do amazing things against all odds with nothing.
Yeah.
And that I find inspiring. And it's average women. It's not like some whoop-de-doo. Yes, they're the whoop-de-doo women and blah, blah, blah. But the average person can do so much by speaking out, by voting, by registering for something, by taking a class, by, protesting, by whatever it is. The individual has so much power, and we don't realize that. And I'm here to encourage every single woman to grab your power and use it, because
Yes.
we have it, and to not use it is not fair to all the women that come after us, and to our daughters and nieces and all
to the world.
Yeah.
Right. It's a disservice to the world when you play small and you don't let your voice be heard.
Yeah. When you play small, I like that wording. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think that's so important. And I love how you classified that with, it doesn't have to be the whoop-de-doo. love your language. It is the average person who makes significant change. And sometimes you don't realize how much impact you are actually having. And so if you're a person who, you're the person that you go, wow, this conversation with Lesley, that impacted me so much. Reach out and tell Lesley, reach out and tell Vicki. Like, these are really important things
to do. That's our reward. Yeah, exactly. That's our
reward. It is. And that inspires us to keep going, to your point. And I'm like you, I feel the same. Like, it just makes my heart warm when somebody says, wow, that conversation I heard about this, that really meant a lot. Or Vicki, when you worked with me on my confidence, I was feeling so much self-doubt, and we all feel self-doubt at points and times in our life, right? But it doesn't mean you do all the time. And so those are really important messages. And I love your spoon theory.
Yes, it's just a silly thought, but if you really understand, the power of one person, it's the collective ones, right? It's joining together and each digging.
Absolutely.
And I think that's true in many for getting anything done today. And it is hard to stay positive. It is hard to keep digging when it feels like we're going backwards sometimes. But I think if we all bond together, and women are very powerful together.
100%. And when we stick together, you can't stop us.
Sticking together is the key, and not falling for the infighting that, infighting over the scarcity model that has been delivered by the patriarchy for so long, which has been, there's the treehouse and it's all guys, and there's one seat for one woman. Now I'm going to throw that out there, and you guys go fight for that. And we'll judge who gets in. And meanwhile, we're just going to continue on doing what we want and ignoring what your needs are.
Yeah.
And that's a really smart look. It's really smart. Like, hey, if you can get the cats to fight with each other instead of turning around and saying,
hang on a second.
What's going on in the treehouse? So, it's a distraction, and we should not be filled by distractions.
Oh, I love it. Boy, you and we can spend hours talking, Lesley.
I know. I know.
We speak the same language. That is for sure. So it's such great content already, but let's take a moment and just, if we look at your career and, all the things that you've done, what have been one or two moments that you feel like have had the biggest impact on you as a person and the direction you've taken?
Man, there's so many. I was so lucky to do so many crazy things. I mean, people always wonder, when you do there's so many crazy, there's the whole crazy exposure to all the fashion people and all the fashion hysteria and there's stories that I could make a comedy show out of what went on in the fashion world. I also worked at Vogue for 9 years, and Harper's was on. So there's a lot in there. but impactful. It really was really shining a light on people's issues that show incredible courage and incredible tenacity and incredible ability to move through difficult situations. And that there's a human spirit aspect to that. And that's where I got very lucky, as being an editor of a magazine when I was running Mary Claire, for instance, or more. And Mary Claire, we did stories around the world about women who were doing unbelievable things. And, we were some of the first people to send somebody in to investigate the Taliban, and so looking at women's issues around the world and understanding that we had come so far compared to the rest of the world was very helpful and shocking at the same time to see
sure.
how women were treated around the world, which I didn't really know. And we would send reporters to do all that. There was, there were just so many interesting stories that we did. I will tell you that the turning point for me in my career was when we did the story, when we had Mrs. Obama at guest edit the magazine. This is my 4th magazine I did. She was always a bestseller. I had to come up with a new idea for, we couldn't just do another interview. I mean, we could have, but it would have been too boring for me. So I had this crazy idea. Let me throw something out there completely wackadoodle to her PR person, who I knew was going to say no. And I said, I just want to do something different. She said, well, try me. And I was like, she's not going to say, I'm going to I'll throw you the stuff you're going to say no to. And when I threw her out, I said, what if she guest edited the magazine? I knew it was going to be a no. And she said, that's really interesting. I had that on the list as an idea. And I was like, really? What? And so when it actually happened, the whole thing was just the pinnacle of my life, because originally, she did, when we worked back and forth through the White House, she actually picked the stories. We edited them up, but she approved them. She gave us her connections. I mean, she really did it. It wasn't like she called it in from somewhere. And then we kept saying, well, we want to do something international as well. We were covering all the national stuff that she did. And she said, they said, well, she doesn't really have a new thing right now, and I said, okay, well, if anything comes up, let me know. Cause I really needed something. We would talk about her eating programs. Everybody knew about a lot of this stuff. We could get behind the scenes, but it would have been nice to have some news. So literally 2 weeks before we put the magazine to bed, they call me and say, she's going to do this Let Girls Learn thing around the world. Do you want to come? I can't keep it just to more. It has to be now. I have to open it up to all the magazines because it needs more exposure than just one magazine. Do you want to come? And I was like, oh no. It's like, no, I can't. I'm putting this magazine to bed. I can't do it. It's 2 weeks. How am I going to change my plans? But it was my publisher who said, you're going. And I'm like, I'm doing what? I can't. How are we going to? She's like, you're going. You're going to figure this out. You're going. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to Japan and to Cambodia and put out the magazine. Well, I'm like, what? So anyway, so I did. It was the most extraordinary thing I've ever done. I got to be the White House correspondent for them, the pool person in Cambodia. When she went into this little school with the president of Cambodia and his wife, and interviewed these young girls. And of course, I came unprepared. I didn't know I was going to be able to do that. I said, I would love to do that. And they were like, no, you don't have the, we would have to get you credentialed, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay, fine. Cause I was like, I'm coming all this way and you're not going to let me into the event. I'm going to sit out on the side and get the pool report. And they got me the credentials. So I was the pool reporter, but I had t-shirts and shorts. I didn't know I was going to be with the president of Cambodia and his wife and all this stuff. So I'm like, okay. So I had to go to the night go to the night market, buy myself a dress. All I had brought with me was my iPad because I didn't plan that I was going to be doing any big editing because nobody had told me. I had to go get myself. I had the iPad and no keyboard. You can't type on an iPad that fast.
Yeah.
Buy myself a keyboard in Singapore when we were on the way there. I mean, the whole thing was crazy. And it was absolutely the most fascinating thing I've ever done. did the pool report, battery died as we're sending in the pool report because heat was so hot. I mean, the whole thing was just hysterically funny. And then at the end, when the whole magazine came out and ended up making history because no other sitting first lady had ever done a guest edit of a magazine. She came and she spoke to about 150 people. We did it at the museum, and we had Robin Wright come because Robin Wright had done the what was it called? Now I'm blanking on her, but she played First Lady. And so we put the two first ladies together, and I'm just blanking on what it was. I can't remember. But so I have both of them behind the scenes waiting to go on. I have Michelle Obama and Robin Wright in the back. I'm talking and I hear the two of them giggling in the back going, oh, this is so much fun. I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, that's it. I'm done. I can't, like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I'm like, so I got to do something else. So I knew then that I was done. I was like, what else could I do? You know, I can't do brain surgery with a magazine. So
that's pretty amazing.
It was crazy. It was insanity. And so it was House of Cards that she did. So
okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking in my head, but I'm not a huge TV person, so I wasn't sure. But what a great story to share on so many levels. I mean, because even if you think about the First Lady, like how many times she's reinvented, right?
Oh, yeah, no, total reinventor and really down to earth and really, you know, just such a wonderful, wonderful human being. And it was just a joy to do and joy to work with all her. The staff around her was fantastic. Very honorable people. I will tell you, after working with people in Hollywood who are not honorable, that these people were incredibly honorable.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, and they didn't have to be.
Yeah, no, they didn't. And it sounds like you had a great time, and
we really did.
A highlight for them as well, right?
Like, oh yeah. And it was, the whole thing was hilarious. And the funny thing was, when I was the pool reporter and I'm sitting in it's a little teeny schoolhouse, and it's boiling hot. It's like, that's probably why I could move to Louisiana, because it's like Louisiana heat. You're like dripping sweat, and I'm trying to type everything they say, because you're the only person in there, right? And you're doing it for everybody. And the hilarious part was her counterpart spoke incredibly softly. And I'm sitting in the front and I'm leaning all the way in, and she's practically whispering, and I'm like, I don't know if I got what she said. I can't really hear her. Like, she's talking like this. It's like this, you know, it's a cultural thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I'm like practically sitting in between their feet so I can hear them. The whole thing was just hilarious, you know, but I love throwing myself into things I've never done, which is why Covey Club was fun to do, because I'd never been an entrepreneur. It was really my readers who came to me and said, do something else for us when they closed the magazine. They were so upset.
Yeah. And that in itself is amazing. And so let's talk about that, right? So now you've reinvented yourself and work with women, helping them to look at how do they reinvent themselves, right? Right. So what happens, like from your lens, like what happens when you start to see, if we get to a certain age or stage, that you know, pushing you out?
It's every ism, sexism, ageism, racism. I mean, a lot of that stuff shows itself earlier, but it also shows itself really later as well. And we know that women tend to get pushed out more in their 50s than men do, or if men get pushed out at the same time, they get back in.
Yes.
And it's harder for women to get back in. And women need to work longer because they are going to live longer. They support elders more often. They support older kids more often. They make 20% less. The whole thing is completely insane. And it's the whole thing. It's just completely insane. It's like, we're the ones holding up the world, and yet we're the ones who make less. The whole thing makes no sense. So, you often have to reinvent yourself. As we used to say it more, we had a great column, which was called Second Acts. We used to say, you never know when you're going to be asked to reinvent yourself, because it may not have anything to do with you. This is what I keep trying to tell people. I go around the country and I talk about how to reinvent yourself, and have a reinvention plan in your back pocket, because you never know when it's going to happen. I mean, look at all these bankers, Silicon Valley Bank, they go to bed on Friday and they think they've got a job on Monday and their bank collapses. Like, these things happen. And we live in this kind of world where we don't know if that's going to happen. And you must always have a plan, and you need to have some money tucked away so you can execute. And you must have, a couple of hobbies that could possibly turn into something if you were forced into that situation. And unfortunately, I learned the hard way that a lot of friends, when they knew that I did reinvention, I mean, I was doing midlife. Originally, Covey was going to be just an online magazine. I mean, I knew magazines, that's what I was going to do. I was going to do a digital magazine. Ha 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 ha. Let me tell you how much that costs. $12,000 a month to do it all yourself. And then no one wanted to pay for it. So I was like, okay, that's not going to work. So I leaned into the club part of it, and people kept coming to me for reinvention, because more was so about reinvention, that we kind of learned about how to help women reinvent themselves. So in the beginning, I thought I had to figure out what your reinvention was. And really over COVID was kind of like our deep workshop moment, because we had a captive audience. Everybody wanted to connect. Everybody wanted to learn. We were teaching 5 days a week, sometimes with evening classes as well, and coaching and all that stuff. And what we really found, we discovered, is that what we could do is it's very much like editing. I can set the table by sort of editing all this stuff for you. I can edit experts, I can edit products, I can edit services, I can edit classes. I can put that all in front of you, either from a blog or from classes or from, challenges or from pods or whatever. And then you pick what's right for you. Each person is on a different journey.
Yeah.
Each person has a different reason why they're reinventing. Some people may reinvent big, they may reinvent small. Someone may want to just reinvent their hair or their look. Some people may want to reinvent their health. Some people may want to leave their husband and leave their career. Some people everybody's doing something different, but they're all in that same stage of change, right?
Yeah.
And so what we learned over COVID is we came up with our tagline, which is, we hold a space for you while you figure out what's next.
Nice.
And that's really how it works. We hold the space, you come, you have to do the work, but we will dump all this stuff in front of you. We'll give you accountability partners. We will introduce you to women outside of your regular sphere. That's one of the problems as we get older, is we know only the people in our sector. Broadening that for you is the way to have you grow. And those cross currents are what help people actually find their next thing.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah, and that's what we do. And I'm in the process now of actually creating some little videos called Covey Success Stories, because we've had so many successes that I didn't even know about. I hear about it because somebody comes to tell me, did you know, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a whole series of Covey success stories, of people who came together. This one woman who was she's been an artist her whole life and a teacher, teaches FIT, really smart. Got together with this other woman. We reconnected them. They knew each other like 10 years ago, reconnected. This other woman had gone through a divorce. She was in the landscape business that wasn't quite working. She was dealing with her divorce. She was all, just having a terrible time dealing with that, and her older kids and all that. Didn't know what she was going to do, but how to do something. Anyway, those two get together. She started doing pottery, and I saw the beginning of the pottery, and she made it into actual ceramics she could sell. The two of them got together. This other woman actually coached her on how to price things, how to photograph them, and now she's got a full business.
Oh, wow.
It's
Amazing.
just absolutely incredible. And I'm like, wow, like that's what I'm talking about. As I say, I'm really terrible at putting people together for love relationships, but I'm really good with business and friendship. Don't ask me to introduce you to anybody. I'm really bad at that, but the other I could do really well.
Well, that's a gift in itself. And there's so much power when you see those connections come
Oh,
to
it's
fruition,
wonderful.
right?
I get such a kick out of it. It's like, that's the whole thing. That's because when we come together, that's where our power is. And when we share and when we cross share with each other, we help each other that way. Each one of those people got so much out of it.
Absolutely.
And this whole idea of, women just have to compete with each other and they can't be there for each other, that's just BS. I'm sorry, it's BS.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry for you if that's all you feel.
Well, and it takes people like yourself and myself, because I do very much the same kind of thing of helping people recognize there is enough for all of us.
Yes, there's
Right?
enough for all of us.
And
Yes.
lift your sister up. Don't push her down.
That's right. There's enough. There really is enough. And let me tell you, in publishing, how much I ran into
Oh, I'm sure.
the other. Oh my God.
Especially fashion, like fashion also. Fashion was my background as well. And it's a tough industry. Like it's sort of a dog eat dog.
Oh man, it's
Energy,
the meanest of the mean. And and I was told, actually, when I worked at Vogue, I was told, you're never going to make it here because you're too nice. And I was hurt.
Yeah.
I was hurt. I was like, wow, that's really, that's painful.
It is.
And then I finally got to a point where I was like, well, do I want to be a bitch? Is that what I need to do? I can't change that about me. And I decided I'll leave and I'm going to go somewhere where I'm appreciated for being nice. I'm not perfect, but I try to be as nice and as, I don't see why you can't be nice in business. You have to be tough.
You can.
But you can be, a good person. You don't have to sell your soul or lie or cheat or steal.
You have to live with you.
Yes,
So
that's how I
that's-
felt. Oh, that's how I felt. Every morning you have to get up and feel like you did your values today and not somebody else's. And so I went elsewhere.
Good for you. And it sounds like you've done amazing.
Oh God, yeah. No, there are a lot of people who still stuck in the old jobs I left behind. They couldn't leave. Well, you get to those places that have marquee names. Yeah. And people are afraid to leave. They literally think you are falling off the edge of the earth.
Yeah. And you're not, because there's so much more out there, so much more to see, do, be. So Lesley, because I'm cognizant of our time and I want to make sure that I don't take too much of your time, but if you could leave the audience with like one really key takeaway today, what would you want people to think about when we hang up today?
Yeah. Well, my basic mantra is it ain't over till you say it's over. And you get to decide when you're done with your career, when you're done with this career, when you want to move on, when you want to try something new, when all of that. Do not listen to somebody else. Don't follow what other people do. You get to decide. Just because my magazine went out of business didn't mean that I had to stop doing what I do for women. You need to figure out what your why is, what your question is, and figure out how else you can do it. If you want to be done, if that's it, if you're done with the whole thing and you want to, go play tennis, do it. That's great too. But if you're not done and you like to work and you like to contribute and you want to continue that route, don't let anybody tell you shouldn't. And find a way. There's a way to do it. And you just have to be with the right people who will encourage you and show you. Nobody has to be done until they want to be done.
Love that. That's a beautiful message. And, audience, I hope you take that to heart. And if you have someone in your life who maybe is stuck or struggling with making those changes or doubting themselves, share this podcast with them, because Lesley has shared some really great nuggets. We're both huge super fans of women and helping women find their purpose, their power. So don't be afraid to share this podcast with them. It might be just the message they need to hear today.
Yes.
Lesley, this is beautiful.
Change lives. It can change lives. All you need to do is hear the right thing at the right day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
thank
And
you.
lead your life. Yes. Thank you. And I want to take a moment and thank our audience. Like, thank you so much for being here today and, participating in this conversation. And as I said, if you've got somebody in your life who needs to hear this, please send it to them, because as Lesley has just shared, it's not over till it's over. So you get to make that decision and have the ability to choose when that time comes for you. There's just so much to do. And if you're curious about your leadership style or what your leadership says about you, go on to WIL Empowered, that's 1L, and take our free leadership quiz. It'll give you a lot of insight into how you are as a conscious leader and what might be your superpower, but also what might be holding you back from being that amazing person you want to be. So again, that's on WIL Empowered. Take our free quiz. And Lesley, again, thank you so much for being here. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Appreciate you sharing everything.
No problem. Take care.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. We'll see you on the next show.